We're going to look at 1 Samuel 17 this morning. In a story that I'm sure none of you know about some person named Goliath. Rarely does it get told. I'm joking. This may be, in a lot of cases, the first Bible story we get told as kids, maybe. But it's one we get told early on. We get told a lot. Okay, gets preached a lot. You know, there's a lot of lessons in it. And what I want to look at it, as we're looking at this morning, what I want to focus on is when we come into a situation in life where a Goliath comes in a situation that if it's going to be handled, it's going to be because it's something only God can do. Okay, and that's the title of the message, Something Only God Can Do. Life throws things at us that we can't handle. Okay, that's part of being in a fallen world. Life throws stuff at us, and no, we don't have the ability to handle it. Okay, but that's why we have God. To help us through those things. So what I want to do, I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I saw a meme this morning. I think it's Whoopi Goldberg. She's holding her Bible in church in some movie, and it says, and she's looking up like this, and it says, when the pastor decides to read the whole chapter. I understand that feeling. You know, with my dad, we'd be in church. We're going to read verses 1 through 111. And I'm sitting there like, so it's going to be lunchtime before you even start preaching, right? So I'm not going to do that. I want to look at verses 8 through 11, 31 through 33, and 48 and 49 this morning. We'll start with verse 8. It says, he stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, why have you not come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Okay, let's jump to verse 31. It says, when the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Okay, now let's jump down to 48 and 49. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. When David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead, the stone sank into his forehead and he fell on his face to the ground. Okay, you've got an evolving situation here throughout this entire passage. God had said earlier, and we talked about it in chapter 16, talking about an anointed king. Don't look at his appearance. Don't look at his height. Okay? That's not what I look for. I look at the heart. Okay? It's kind of funny because now those words don't apply to finding a king. They apply to defeating a Goliath. Okay? God could say the same thing. Don't look at his height. Don't look at his appearance. I look at the heart. Okay? David didn't look like a king. Goliath didn't look like something to be defeated. And in both situations, the human perspective was wrong. Because David, in God's eyes, was a king. Goliath, in God's eyes, was a little grasshopper. Okay? So you've got a human perspective issue here. Okay? 3 things that I want to focus on in those verses. One is, life is not going to move forward with a Goliath in it. Okay? Life's not going to move forward with a Goliath in it. Okay? Sometimes we come to situations and we can go around them. We can go under them. We can go over them. Okay? If you've ever flown in with storms, if pilots can fly around a storm, they will, but sometimes there's such a massive storm, they've got to fly through it. They can't get above it. They can't get around it. Okay? Life, sometimes you can't get around what's in front of you. You can't go over it. You can't go under it, which means you've got to simply go through it. That is the only option. Okay? Unless you just want to spend the rest of your life in a standoff with that Goliath. Okay? We're looking at this. We know Goliath was an intimidating figure. Okay? 9 feet, 9 inches tall. So I'm 6 feet tall. So put almost 4 more feet on me. Okay? Almost out of a basketball goal. Okay? So in my younger days, I could have jumped and touched the top of his head. Today, I can't jump. So it's not going to matter. Okay? But that's how tall this guy is. Okay? That doesn't take into account what he looks like with armor on. There's many times we've said, looking at before a football game, guys getting off the bus, they're not that big. Then they come out in pads and we're like, whoa. They're a little bit bigger than we remember. Okay? So you put the armor on and there's even more intimidation there. Okay? He's got a guy that's in front of him, according to verses 5 through 7, that's carrying a shield for him that would have protected the majority of his body. So you've literally got a giant taunting the army of Israel. Okay? He does it for 40 days. Okay? Now we've all heard, and we've said it as parents, and I've decided this is bad advice, even though we still say it as parents. Just ignore them. They'll go away. My life experience says very differently. Because I ignored a lot of things and they didn't go away. And I ignored a lot of people and they still, are there. Okay, they hadn't moved. This situation, you can't ignore it. You can't negotiate with it. Okay, Goliath was a problem. He had to be dealt with or he wasn't going to go away. Situations in life pop up. If you don't deal with them, they don't go away. They don't disappear. Okay? Even if you think they have, at some point in life, they pop back up because they were never dealt with, never faced. Okay? Goliaths are placed in our lives not to bring us to a standstill, but to allow us the opportunity to overcome. Because for some reason, in God's plan, in God's purpose, that Goliath needs to be overcome in our life. There's something there in that Goliath that God knows we need to conquer for, down the road. Okay. Now, everybody's Goliath looks different. Okay. It can be an addiction. It can be a mindset, an emotion, a physical issue, a mental creation, an actual circumstance. Okay. Goliaths look different. Okay. But they all have the same name. Okay. It's still a Goliath. Okay. Max Lucado describes it this way. He says, your Goliath doesn't carry sword or shield, but he brandishes blades of unemployment, abandonment, sexual abuse, or depression. Your giant doesn't parade up and down the hills of Elah, but he prances through your office, your bedroom, your classroom. He brings bills you can't pay, grades you can't make, people you can't please, whiskey you can't resist, pornography you can't refuse, a career you cannot escape, a past you can't shake, and a future you cannot face. We all know well the roar of Goliath. Okay? We all know it. It's been different in our lives, but we know what Goliath looks like. We know what Goliath sounds like, and we know how Goliath makes us feel when he's in our lives. Okay? The Israelites have to move on. They have to. They can't move forward without dealing with the army that's right across the valley. Okay? See, that's the other thing about a Goliath. Most of the time it's in your face. You know, it's right there taunting you, discouraging you, giving you fits at 3 a.m. in the morning. You know, it's in your face when you wake up. It's in your face when you go to bed. It's in your face when you go to work. And what's even more discouraging is if it's a Goliath that only you know about and no one else does. When you need to talk about it and you can't. When you need some help dealing with it, but you don't feel you can ask, or you don't feel you have the support. So it's just you and that monster in front of you. Okay? Okay? And it scares us. Okay? It's scary to face something that appears to be much bigger than you. I got no problem killing a rattlesnake. You put an anaconda out there, it's a little bit different. Okay. When it's bigger than you are, you're not sure anymore. And that's a challenge. Okay. You know, your life becomes a battlefield of torment and taunting. Okay, and being dominated by whatever that Goliath is in front of you. Okay. Some of the Goliaths that we faced family-wise in our lives. My brother in high school had a cocaine addiction. Tried to commit suicide on 9/11. My sister spent 18 months in prison for credit card fraud, hot check writing. Okay, I've got my own issues. Okay, those are Goliaths. And guess what? During those times, I remember watching my parents. It consumed them. That's what their day was about. It wasn't about work. Okay, it wasn't about going and doing something. It wasn't about fun. Every day, that's what they dealt with. Okay. And everything else was on the peripherals. It was just, hey, I've just got to do this because I've got to do this. But the day, the season of life was always about that. And that's what Goliath is. Okay? Your life is about that. It's no longer about your job. It's no longer about family. It's no longer about education. It's no longer about, hobbies. Your day's about Goliath. That's the center stage, which is the problem. Because everything else that you ought to be enjoying, focusing on, you're not enjoying, you're not focusing on. Because this is now your life for however long it stands there. Okay. For my parents, it was 10 years before things finally settled. Okay. And only to eventually, more Goliaths are going to pop up. But in that case, it was a 10-year, every day, the same Goliath. Okay. Then you've got your own stories. Okay. That you can relate to in what I'm talking about. Okay. Goliaths are overwhelming seasons in your life. Okay. David, he'd write several Psalms. Psalm 13, 1 and 2. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Psalm 119:84, how long must your servant endure? When will you judge those who persecute me? When a Goliath's in your life, that's what your prayer life looks like. It's all questions. God, why this? Why that? Why won't you do this? Why won't you do that? What are you doing here? What are you? It's all questions. It's not conversational. Okay, it's rarely praise filled. It's all trying to get questions answered, even though the answers may make you feel worse. You know, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? Da, 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 da. Well, this is going to go on for another 3 years. I didn't want to know that. Never mind. Okay. Sometimes we ask questions without thinking whether or not we really want to know the answer to those questions. I've asked questions before. And whether it's with my daughters or with my students, they give me the answer, and I'm like, nah, never mind. I don't want to know anymore. I wish I hadn't asked the question in the first place. You know, that's, you know. With God, we ask questions without considering, hey, we may not like the answer. And, you know, that's just part of us. Okay. But Goliath, they're not going to go away. They're not going to let you pass. You're going to have to go through them. Okay. Job, the lesson he learned in facing his Goliath, I love this verse as long as I don't have to actually experience what he's talking about. Where he says, I had heard of you with my ears, but now I've seen you with my eyes. Okay. Now the challenge there, what I meant when I said that was, you know, Job had to go through the worst experiences of human life before he was able to say that. You know, our preference is, I would prefer for my eyes to see you without going through all of that. Okay. We know that's typically not how it works. Okay. Second thing, sometimes God's solutions do not appear adequate to the challenge. Sometimes God's solutions do not appear adequate to the challenge. So you've got your Goliath in front of you, taunting you, dominating your life. And God prescribes a remedy. God prescribes a solution. He gives a plan. He spells it out. And your response is, really? That's my favorite word in the English language anymore. Because it's all how you say it. Really can mean like 150 different things. Facial expressions. Okay. But that's how I am right here in this. I'm thinking, really? Are you serious? That's not going to work. Okay. David doesn't appear, at least from not what we see, in any way to be the solution to the problem of Goliath. Okay. He does not appear to be what they're looking for. In fact, when this is all started, he's not even there. Okay, so the solution to Goliath is not even present where Goliath is. Okay, he's out doing what he's consistently been doing. Okay, back and forth between tending sheep and, we talked last week, serving Saul. Okay, still doing what God has called him to do. And the only reason that David appears on the battlefield is because his dad sent him there to check on his brothers. And this is just how God works. God wanted David there to defeat Goliath. Nobody else wanted David there to defeat Goliath because David wasn't the answer in their eyes. In fact, David was the errand boy. Just go give this to your brothers and go back to tending the sheep. That was the idea. Go check on them. So David arrives, talking with his brothers. Goliath comes out, engages in the same taunt, the same intimidation that he's been doing for 40 days. The only difference today, David's there. Okay? David's there to hear what is said. And all the men of Israel respond in the same way, fear. They're scared. We understand that. All except David. David's got some questions. Well, what's going to happen? What's going to be done for the guy that defeats Goliath? Okay. He's told. And David has no patience for Goliath's continued assault upon the people of God, and he wants to deal with it. Well, his brother Eliab has a problem with that. He's upset with David. He's negative towards him. He questions David's motive in all of this. Okay. A word of caution here, which we all know. There's always going to be someone in your life that tries to discourage you from overcoming Goliath. Okay. They are encouragers of doubt rather than encouragers of victory. So they're going to cause you to doubt. They're going to be like Job's friends. They're going to be like David's brother. And they're going to put these doubts in your head. Okay. David's words reach Saul, though. Verses 31 through 33, David says, I'll go fight. Saul says, you can't do it. You're not the answer. You're too young. David's response, I love this, caring for sheep taught me a lot. Remember last week I talked about a season of preparation. Well, guess what? David in the sheep field, that was the season of preparation. He's now moving from the season of preparation to the season of action. And who would have ever thought that out in the sheep pasture is where the preparation would happen for David to defeat the Goliath? Who would have ever thought in your life that this particular season of whatever was the season of preparation for you to defeat Goliath? You never know. Okay? You absolutely never know. Okay. Well, from there, David, he's given the best weaponry, all he needs, the best armor. David says, that's not going to work. Can't do it. Got a better idea. Let's put down the sword. Let's get a slingshot. Let's get some rocks. That'll work. At this point, this is a borderline plan of insanity. You've got two human perspective issues here. One, God's chosen the wrong warrior. Two, God's chosen the wrong weaponry. Okay? I mean, we're just being honest. That's what it looks like. God's plan doesn't make sense. Doesn't look like it's going to work. Okay. Application-wise, guess what? There's times I've said, God, that's not going to work. That don't look right. What you've told me to do there, no, that's not going to, no. There's no way. Okay. My plan was actually better. I had it all figured out. I mean, yeah, Goliath's still there, but, if it doesn't work the first time, try again. Okay, what's kind of funny in this story of David and Goliath, when Goliath makes his initial appearance, David isn't even around. In fact, David doesn't appear for 40 days. So, the answer for Goliath was not present when Goliath initially showed up. The answer to your Goliath may not be there yet. Doesn't mean that the answer isn't known. It just means the answer is not ready. Okay. And I promise you, when the answer to Goliath is ready, God's going to show it to you in your life. It's going to be there. Now you're going to have to trust it. Even though it sounds insane, but it's going to be there. Okay. Habakkuk was a man that struggled with questions in situations like this. Habakkuk 1, 2 through 4. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you're not going to hear, or cry to you violence, and you won't save? Why do you make me see iniquity? Why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise, so the law is paralyzed. Justice never goes forth, for the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. God's answer to this, and what is my favorite verse in Scripture, is, write down this revelation, make it plain on tablets, send it with a herald that he may run with it. My answer awaits an appointed time. Though it seems to linger, wait for it, for it will surely come and not prove false. Okay. God says, I know. I'm preparing it. It's going to work. Now wait for it. So the Israelites for 40 days are having to wait on God's response, God's answer. Okay. Doug Lansky is he's a travel writer and photographer, and he's collected photos over the years of odd signs from around the world, and some samples are some of these. In Monroe, Pennsylvania, there's a white highway sign that says "Entrance only, do not enter." There's a yellow diamond-shaped sign from Mill Valley, California that says, "Not a through street." Right below it is the blue circle with a white arrow pointing straight ahead with words "evacuation route." A sign in Pennsylvania says, "Invisible fence now open." And in Rome, Georgia, there's a sign that says, "Used rainbows, $250 and up." Sometimes that's just, we feel like God said something like that to us. Like that doesn't even, don't even comprehend that. Okay. But God, the reason he sees so much further down the road than us is because he's the creator of that road. He knows exactly what's down there, knows where the potholes are, knows where the smooth parts are, know where construction is needed. He knows all that. Okay. And he's asking us to trust his vision. Okay. Third and final thing. Always remember God has never lost a battle. Always remember God has never lost a battle. Matt Redman's worship song, "Never Once," really applies to this. Never once have we ever walked alone. Never once did he leave us on our own. You are faithful, God, you're faithful. Okay. God's never lost. Okay. An inadequate David here with an inadequate slingshot and inadequate rocks goes out and through God takes inadequacy and uses it for victory. Supposedly, the rocks he used were about that big. Supposedly. I don't know how they know that, but, geologists, they're weird. Archaeologists, they probably say I'm weird, so that's okay. But if they're that size, you can see, that's going to hurt someone. I got pegged one time with a rock about that big in the leg, and I cried like a little girl. So, something like that is different. Okay, love the details here. Goliath laughs when he sees, look who you're bringing out. Same way Satan laughs when God's choice of victory is placed on the battlefield against his choice of a Goliath. Satan laughs because he never gets it. At some point you ought to realize the person that's defeated you your entire existence is probably going to defeat you again. Okay? But he doesn't get it, and that's fine. Okay. And David says this. I don't know why we don't talk like this anymore. I'm going to cut off your head and feed your body to the birds. And everyone is going to see the hand of God at work today. I don't think we can say that anymore. But that's what David says. Okay. I find it funny. He took 5 stones. I don't know why, because it only took 1. I guess that's one of those heaven questions one day. Why did you get 5 stones? You only needed 1. And maybe we'll get the answer. 1 stone, 1 shot. dead, God wins. And guess what? The rest of the Philistines, they run off. See, that's what God does. When you deal with Goliath through God's prescribed response, all the other potential Goliaths take off in the opposite direction. Resist the devil and he will do what? He will flee from you. That's exactly what David did. He resisted. The rest of the enemy fled. Oh, and like I said, they'll come back. Philistines were a problem for a long time, but they kept losing. Okay. Ultimately. Okay. It says in verse 17, or chapter 17, verse 47, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord God saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. The only way we lose the battle is if we take ownership of the battle. I mean, it's the only way. If we take ownership and we say, no, God, this is my battle, not yours, that's how we lose. As long as we allow the battle to be God's, then that's a battle we win. As long as Goliath remains in the hands of God and not in the hands of me, I'm going to be okay. I've got to trust what God is doing. Okay. And understand, God doesn't waste past victories. Okay. He doesn't waste those things. They serve a next time purpose. Okay. Because we need to remember the other Goliath victories that have happened in our life when we face a current one. In the Old Testament, God gave his people stones or sacks of stones as reminders of his past faithfulness. They were called Ebenezers. Okay, I mean stones of remembrance. Okay, to remind us, remind the people of what God had done. We need to have the same Ebenezers in our life. Okay, those stones of remembrance of what God has done. And we need to be able to say very simply to the Goliaths in our lives the same thing that David said. So very simply, you have come to me with sword, with a spear, with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. That's the prescribed remedy that God gives us. Speaking victory over that Goliath. Because our God is a God who has never lost a battle. Okay, let's pray. God, you know all the Goliaths that we have faced, that we are facing, that we will ever face, not just in this room, God, but among all of your people. There is no Goliath that comes to challenge us that you don't fully understand, and that you have not already yourself defeated. So what we face, what stands before us is something that we are fully capable through you of overcoming. And God, we need to trust what you say. And we need to trust what you do. God, we need to take the words that you spoke to Habakkuk to heart, that though it linger, wait for it. For it will surely come and will not fail. So God, whatever Goliaths present themselves at this moment or down the road, God, let us wait, enduring and expecting that victory that we know comes. In Jesus' name.